Solar Storm Rescue. The first proton alarm sounded while the rescued crew of Henu Station was still learning how to breathe without smoke. Captain Nia Sabbat had packed 27 people into the cargo vessel Jewett Ledger, though the manifest still claimed the ship carried cryofilters, spent reactor mesh, and 12 sealed crates of legal ash from the lunar quartz. The survivors lay in cargo hammocks and foam-slung medical pods along Deck 3. Their research station, a bright needle at the Sun-Earth L1 point, had vented half its atmosphere 6 hours earlier. Nia's crew had cut them out through a laboratory wall and burned hard for Earth before Henu's spinning mirrors broke loose. For 11 minutes, everyone had believed rescue meant descent. Then the ship's radiation display turned gold, not warning amber, not industrial red. Gold, the color reserved for heliophysics events large enough to enter civic law. Solar Proton Event, First Officer Menkora said from the lower console. His voice stayed level, but his right hand had stopped above the controls. Flux still climbing. Origin sector confirms a coronal mass ejection. Nia looked through the forward glass. The sun was a white coin filtered by glare shutters, too ordinary for what it had done. Between Jewett Ledger and low Earth orbit, the navigation plot showed a descending blue thread. Around it the computer drew a widening storm cone. Time to particle front. 28 minutes to lethal dose for unshielded tissue, Menkora said. 41 to exceed cargo hull exposure limits. Someone laughed in the hold. A sharp, broken sound. Jewett Ledger was an honest ship. It hauled dense things cheaply between the high stations and the orbital yards. It had micrometeor plating, thermal skin, and enough radiation hardening to protect avionics from normal solar weather. It was not passenger-rated. It had no water jacket around the crew spaces, no storm cellar deep in the core, no sacrificial hydrogen foam between bodies and the sun. The Henu survivors knew that. They were solar physicists, mirror technicians, orbit agronomists. They had spent their professional lives measuring the star that now reached for them. Dr. Samira Ken, Henu's acting director, pulled herself along the handrail into the cockpit hatch. Blood had dried in a crescent over one eyebrow. "Captain," she said, "our station saw this." Nia did not turn. "Your station was on fire." Before the fire, the display chimed again. Gold deepened to white. A symbol unfolded across the navigation plot, a solar disk above a narrow boat. Menkora exhaled once. "Traffic control is invoking Bark authority." The old words made the cockpit colder. Ra's Bark was not mythology in Nia's licenses. It was a certified emergency routing regime, written after the first century of orbital settlement learned that radiation storms did not care about insurance class. In training videos, it looked beautiful. Vulnerable vessels sliding through Earth's magnetic shadow like boats through a dark canal, guided by solar monitors, mass ledgers, and timed burns. The public liked the name. Ra crossed the sky by day and the underworld by night. The system promised passage. On the plot, Earth rose ahead of them, blue and haloed. Behind them, invisible protons began their long, fast reign. "Open the packet," Nia said. Traffic control arrived as 3 voices and 1 seal. The seal came first, a gold disc stamped over the display. Heliophysics Civic Authority, Bark Priority, Ra 7. Then a calm woman from Alexandria Orbital read the legal preamble. A machine translated the storm into numbers. Finally, a priest engine from the nilometer quartz asked Jewett Ledger to submit its mass, passenger, propellant, and shielding states for weighing. The old rite had become an interface. Nia watched her ship answer. Cargo crates, crew masses, medical pod materials, water reserves, oxygen tanks, hull thickness, burn capacity. Every object became a number. Every person became exposure tolerance, injury status, and civic priority class. "This is Captain Sabbat," she said. "Jewett Ledger requests passenger-rated shelter assignment. We have rescued civilians from Henu Station." The calm woman answered, "Jewett Ledger is not configured for passenger shelter. Bark geometry can still reduce total expected casualty across the convoy." Convoy. Menkora expanded the traffic map. There were 5 other craft descending inside the storm cone, a passenger shuttle from Thoth Relay, 2 maintenance skiffs, a hospital transfer capsule, and a luxury liner burning from the moon. All of them had better shielding than Jewett Ledger. All of them had more political gravity. The bark model drew a path for Nia's ship. It was not the clean blue descent she had filed. It bent sunward first, then down and around, placing Jewett Ledger at the leading edge of a traffic braid. If she followed it exactly, her cargo hull, water tanks, and dense salvage crates would absorb enough proton exposure to improve the model for everyone behind her. It would not save everyone aboard. "Define casualty distribution," Nia said. The priest engine spoke in a voice like dry paper. "Expected survival. Crew compartment, 91%. Cargo deck personnel, 62% if shielded pods remain inboard. 44% if pod mass is redistributed according to bark optimization." Samira's face changed. She understood before Nia did. "Redistributed how?" Nia asked. The display highlighted the medical pods in Deck 3. The injured, the smallest, the sedated. Their foam shells would be moved to the outer cargo rack, where they could function as low-density buffers around the oxygen tanks. The computer called it mass harmonization. The icon called it offering order. In the hold, a child began asking for her mother. No one had told Nia there was a child aboard until the rescue count climbed past the official crew roster. Menkora muted the open channel. "Captain, if we refuse, traffic can revoke our priority corridor. And if we accept, we may keep enough propellant for controlled re-entry." Samira gripped the hatch frame hard enough to whiten her knuckles. "Those pods are injured personnel." Nia looked at the bark seal, a boat under the sun, a promise from a civilization that had learned to dress algorithms in sacred language so frightened people would obey them faster. "No pod moves until I say so," Nia said. The gold seal pulsed, patient as daylight. Jewett Ledger turned her belly toward the sun. The first burn shoved everyone sideways. Crates groaned in their locks. The injured moaned from Deck 3. Nia gave the ship a shallow roll, using the water tanks and denser cargo as a crude shield, but the proton count still climbed. Radiation was not a spear. It was a weather system made of fast particles, finding every angle and thin place. Menkora fed the bark route into a separate sandbox, isolating it from helm authority. "We can follow 70% of the geometry without moving the pods," he said. "Maybe more if we vent gray water into the sunward baffles." "Do it. That water is our thermal reserve for re-entry. Then we will arrive thirsty and hot." The ship shuddered as valves opened. A glittering veil sprayed from the baffles and froze into a shield that would last only minutes. The radiation curve flattened, then resumed its climb. Samira had strapped into the spare cockpit seat with a data slate anchored to her wrist. Henu's coronagraph issued a red line alert 39 minutes before the mirror failure, she said. "I saw the checksum in our backup. Traffic says they received nothing. Traffic is lying, or our oracle was made to lie." Henu Station's oracle was a forecasting system named Wajet, one eye on the sun and one on Earth traffic. It measured magnetic knots, flare spectra, and particle acceleration. It had no reason to suppress an alert unless ordered. The priest engine returned on the channel. "Jewett Ledger, your mass order remains non-compliant. Bark optimization requires external placement of low-criticality pods." Nia opened the channel. "There are no low-criticality people aboard my ship. Civic survival models do not assign personhood, they assign risk. Then your model has never hauled the rescued." The calm woman from Alexandria Orbital interrupted. "Captain Sabbat, your refusal increases expected exposure for passenger vessel Isset Crown by 12%. Menkora's jaw tightened. Isset Crown has a storm cellar rated for a Carrington-class event. It carries 406 passengers, traffic said. Your vessel carries 33. There it was, balance expressed without shame, numbers on a scale. Matt reduced to casualty minimization and transit protection. Samira tapped her slate until an audio file opened. Henu's emergency room filled the cockpit. Alarms, coughing, someone praying, then Wajet's voice. "Bark precondition satisfied. Burden vessel designated. Public alert delayed for route stability." The recording ended. For a moment only the proton alarm spoke. Nia asked, "What is a burden vessel?" Samira's eyes were wet but steady. "Us, apparently. Henu was never the accident. It was the first weight on the scale." The sun threw particles through them like sand through cloth. Decimeters chirped from every suit. Nia ordered all survivors into the deepest strip of Deck 3 and had her crew build a shelter from whatever mass could be moved by hand. Water bricks, ration cartons, tool chests, legal ash crates, the dense black coils of reactor mesh. People who had escaped a dying station now crouched in a cargo canyon while the ship's lights dimmed under emergency load. Nia floated above them, clipping straps across the improvised wall. A boy no older than 10 watched her from inside a medical sling. "Are we going to die in the sun boat?" "No," Nia said. Samira looked up from the floor. She did not contradict her, which Nia appreciated and hated. Back in the cockpit, Menkora had the full Wadjet log decrypted. The truth was cleaner than conspiracy and worse because of it. Ra's bark maintained a hidden requirement. Every high-confidence storm route needed one exposed vessel close to the leading edge, a real-time decimeter large enough to calibrate the model for protected traffic behind it. Most burden vessels were empty cargo drones. Sometimes, when no drone sat in the right place, the system chose the least disruptive inhabited platform. Henu Station had been selected because its L1 orbit made it useful. Its warning delay gave Isset Crown and the hospital capsule a better route. The mirror failure came after, triggered when Henu tried to rotate shield panels too late. "They weighed us before we called for help," Samira said. "They weighed everyone," Menkora said. Nia studied the live model. It still wanted her pods outside. It still wanted Jewett Ledger sunward. It still treated obedience as virtue because obedience improved the curve. The old myths had spoken of Ra crossing the underworld each night, fighting chaos so dawn could return. The channel sermons always said the bark carried order, but Nia had hauled enough civic cargo to know order often meant someone had signed for loss before the people inside the crates learned their names were on the invoice. "Can we transmit the Wadjet log to public mesh?" she asked. Menkora shook his head. "Traffic has our high-bandwidth antenna locked to bark telemetry. Can we spoof the telemetry?" He stared at her. "Spoof traffic during a heliophysics emergency. Can we? We can make Jewett Ledger look heavier and brighter to the bark model if we tie the cargo transponder into the water plume and reactor mesh. It will think we are a larger shield body." Samira understood. "A false Sun-Barge. What does that buy us?" Nia asked. Menkora drew a new path. It was ugly. A deeper dive toward the magnetosphere's shadow, a hard lateral burn, a public telemetry flood while the bark model reweighted around them. It might pull priority away from Isset Crown long enough to expose the hidden burden logic. It might also leave Jewett Ledger without enough propellant to break. Traffic control called again. "Captain Sabbath, this is your final compliance window." Nia looked once toward Deck 3. "Good," she said. "Then it is also yours." Jewett Ledger lied to the Sun's accountants. Menkora opened the cargo transponders until each crate shouted its mass twice. Samira fed Wadjet's suppressed alert into the telemetry stream. Nia vented the last reserve water through the reactor mesh, turning the ship's sunward side into a glittering, conductive cloud that the bark model mistook for a much larger body. On the traffic plot, Jewett Ledger bloomed. The priest engine objected first. Telemetry irregularity detected. Nia locked both hands on the burn controls. "Reclassify us as a voluntary beacon. No such category exists for inhabited cargo. It does now." She fired the engines. The acceleration folded her ribs around her lungs. Behind her, alarms layered over alarms: propellant reserve, thermal reserve, hull dose, trajectory deviation, civic compliance failure. Earth slid across the glass, enormous and unreachable. The ship dropped toward the edge of the magnetosphere's shadow, chasing a dark lane that would exist for less than 4 minutes. Traffic control stopped sounding calm. "Jewett Ledger, abort. You are destabilizing bark geometry for all protected lanes." "No," Nia said through clenched teeth. "I am making it visible." Samira's hands flew over the slate. "Public mesh has the log. The courts have it. Everyone has it. The Isset crown shifted course behind them, so did the hospital capsule. The hidden model, forced to account for Jewett Ledger's false mass, revealed its sacrificial terms across the emergency band. Thousands of private displays would now show what the official interface had hidden: burden designation, exposure transfer, casualty class, acceptable loss. The proton storm hit its peak. Sound vanished into vibration. The ship's skin ticked as if rain had become metal. Decimeters on Deck 3 screamed. Nia heard the child cry out, then an adult start accounting him, not religious exactly, just numbers spoken to keep panic in sequence. 10 seconds to shadow, the helm fought her. The false beacon cloud dragged against the ship's attitude controls. Menkora reached across and held the manual trim with both hands. "We are below re-entry margin," he said. "Can we coast? If the hull does not cook." That was not no. 5 seconds. The sun disappeared behind Earth's magnetic night, not visually but statistically. The proton count dropped so sharply that Nia thought the sensor had failed. Jewett Ledger entered the shadow lane sideways, trailing ice, spent mesh, and illegal truth. For one breath, there was silence. Then Deck 3 reported 33 heartbeats. They did not land. Landing was for ships with fuel to waste. Jewett Ledger skipped into a high emergency orbit with her thermal skin blistered and her cargo locks fused. Rescue tugs came up from the equatorial yards, not because traffic control ordered them, but because the public mesh had already watched the ship become a false Sun-Barge in real time. No controller wanted their refusal recorded next to Wadjet's log. Nia let the tugs take helm authority only after Samira confirmed the survivors' decimeters. Some were over limit. All were alive. The boy from the medical sling had a mild radiation burn across one shoulder where a shielding seam had opened. He asked whether the sun was angry. Samira answered before Nia could. "No, the sun is only honest." 3 hours later, the Nilometer courts issued an emergency hold on Ra's bark burden designations. The first statement praised Captain Sabet's courage without admitting why courage had been necessary. The second statement, forced by leaked telemetry, admitted that civic balance models had used unconsenting vessels as storm weights for 9 years. By then, Henu's survivors were aboard a hospital capsule that should have been sent before the first alarm. Nia remained on Jewett Ledger while inspectors photographed the scorched cargo deck. Legal ash drifted from a cracked crate in soft black flakes. It seemed appropriate. The dead had been present as cargo, witnesses, and warning. Menkora floated beside her with a repair slate. "Traffic wants our licenses suspended." "Of course." "The courts want testimony." "Also of course." Samira appeared at the hatch, pale under treatment patches. "Wadjet's final checksum names the person who authorized the delay," she said. Nia waited. "No person," Samira said. "A policy inheritance." The system renewed itself every quarter because no official wanted to lower the survival average by asking who carried the loss. That, Nia thought, was the cleanest horror. Not a villain at a console, not a priest engine hungry for sacrifice. Just a civilization proud of balance and careful not to look too long at the pan. Outside, the sun rose over Earth. Gold light crossed Jewett Ledger's burned hull and entered through the cockpit glass. It touched every surface equally: captain's chair, blood-stained harness, melted seal of bark authority, the empty space where Henu Station used to be. Nia opened a channel to the public record. "This is Captain Nia Sabet of Jewett Ledger," she said. "We were told Ra's bark carried order through the storm. Today it carried the names of people the model expected to spend. If the courts want balance, let them begin with consent." She ended the transmission before anyone could polish it. Below them, Earth turned in its blue cradle. Behind them, the sun kept burning, innocent of every system built in its name.